contracted the pink eye, which my children had. And gosh, I wash my hands a lot, so I'm disappointed. But you roll the dice, and here it is. What it's like being a parent, but grateful for you all today. We've been talking about what is it like to follow Jesus? What does it feel like? And we're going to keep exploring that particular concept. We'll do a little bit of a review, but part of what we've been including is that it's even better than we could possibly imagine. And there's this wrestling match sometimes where we try to give our things to God, give our life, give our struggles, give our difficult relationships, and those can be real painful to wade through, but on the other side of saying, okay, God, I finally surrender this thing to you, it can feel real light, real spacious. And that is one of the weird promises that Jesus gives to us, that somehow his yoke is easy, his burden is light, that he will work alongside us. And so we're going to keep working with some of those concepts. And part of what I've been thinking about, I'm going to tell you a surfing story here in a minute. I took up surfing a few years ago. I'm terrible at it. The story will be about how terrible I am at it. But there is something that we do as a leadership team where we ask, where are we in this journey of kind of launching Dwell Church? And there was a moment where we said, well, we want more Dwell Church people to know each other. We might be ready to do some Sunday stuff, but we want people to know each other. So we're meeting at field works, getting to know one another, and that was a really lovely time. There was a season where we said, this is going to be a really fun backyard season with like snacks and drinks and kids and dogs. That was really lovely. And now we're at the phase where we don't know how to put up all this stuff. We're breaking it. Something is fixed with a hanger every week, and we are grateful for that hanger, let me tell you. Yeah, it's the same problem, so no one knows how to fix that. But someday, I'm sure that we will. We're also in the part where we're building something. And we've tried to remove the idea of volunteering our time. Because instead we're saying, we're not just volunteering time. Every minute that you spend here is something that we're doing to build a space. We're building a program or an environment, or maybe even we're building a person. If you've been around kids, you know somehow you're building into who they are as a person. And all the things we are building are for a particular reason, that God promised to dwell within us and among us. And that there are great, long, detailed descriptions of what God hoped people would build so that he could dwell with them and among them. And the greatest thing that he built was you and I. And he called us to build communities of people where we can know and love each other, and where Jesus has promised to dwell with us. There's kind of a double promise, that he promised to always be with you, but then in an even more powerful way, he promised to always be here with us. That's why we got to keep doing this. That's why church has got to keep going, because Jesus promised to be there. And part of what we're exploring as Dwell Church is, how do we make sure we're rightly imagining a God so large and grand that he is worth following, worth sacrificing for, worth showing up for? What if God was even better than we imagined? And sometimes I remember growing up and be like, I don't want to go to church, but at least there's donuts. And then there was a season where I was like, I love going to church. And then there was a season where I was like, it's my job. And now I'm in a season where, what if I kept imagining God so big and so wonderful, knowing particularly me, that he was worth showing up for? One of the first things that I said in our kind of discernment meetings here about Dwell Church was, actually doesn't matter what kind of church we plant. There are lots of great churches out there. We could be like any one of them. What really matters is what kind of God we're imagining God to be. Is he gargantuan enough to set our hearts and minds on fire and draw us in, so that this is all worth it? This all seems like an obvious sacrifice to a God who is so grand and wonderful. Of course, I would happily do these risky and difficult things. So when you learn how to surf, there's like 10 different skills, but one of them is just paddling out there, trying to get crushed by the waves. Sometimes you do. And then you get past the crashing waves and you sit out there and you're like, oh, this is the safe zone. Feels great. Take a deep breath. Bring my heart rate down. Thank God I'm still alive. And then you realize we're never going to catch a wave out here. You can sit there all day, but no wave will ever be close to crashing when you're way out there past them. So then you got to go back in where the waves are crashing. And if you want to learn how to do it, there's a moment where you have to decide for yourself, I'm going to paddle my board in there before I'm ready, before I'm emotionally and physically prepared, before my skill development has matured enough to where I could ever catch one of those waves. I have to get in there before I am ready. And what happens in there is you learn so much more when you're in the danger zone. Occasionally you get crushed, but you learn so much more where the waves are crashing than you do out where it's sinking. And to get there, you have to arrive before you're ready. There's something in this journey for me that I loved my last job. I loved it, and I knew I had to make this jump, and I did it before I was ready. I'm going to ask you all to make that same leap of faith, that for us to build what we think Dwell Church could become, we will have to jump in, get into the danger zone before we are ready. And for you, that's going to maybe mean 2 or 3 things. You want to know and love the people that are here. I also need you to think about giving time, financial resources to build this place. And you might have to do those things, giving time and financial resources before you are ready. Because when we're in that danger zone, that's where the thing grows the most. That's where our skills grow the most. That's where we find out how to really do this when we jump in before we're ready. So if you're new, we'd love for you to connect through the QR code with our connection form. We'd love to just get to know you, see how we can serve you. But all of us at some point or another are going to have to jump in before we are ready to make sure we are building this. We'll talk more about some of our financial goals later, but I also want to talk about how this is better than you imagine. Last year I couldn't get my clicker to work, or last week I couldn't get my clicker to work. Let's see if I can do it this time. Wrong way. But still, it seems to be working. Yes. Oh! Jesus is even better than you imagine. Each week we try to improve something, and this is it, everyone. Iteration, live, you got to witness it. This is what evolution feels like. All right, knowing this Jesus is better than you imagine. Here's where we've been in this series. We started by thinking about Matthew chapter 11, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light, and my buttons are sensitive." And we talked about Pete Holmes. He, a comedian, once said, "What does it feel like to be in the presence of God? It feels spacious." And we have the opportunity offered to us by this Jesus to live every day in the presence of God. That spaciousness is available to us every single day. How does it feel to follow Jesus? Gosh, it feels spacious. The kingdom of the easy yoke and the light burden. Last week, we also talked about what do we get when we spend our day in God's presence. If we wake up and that's our singular goal, then everything that happens to us, we get to experience it with Jesus as our teacher. All the good stuff, which we'll talk about today, good things that happen to you, or all the difficult stuff that we struggle through. We get to say, "Jesus, will you teach me through this?" And we saw that he will teach us a whole slew of things, some of them very intimate and particular to your specific story. That you have psychological patterns and wounds and strengths that only you and really Jesus know, and that he's going to teach you so many things through those patterns, that the lessons Jesus has for you are highly specific to you as a human being. And yet there's another lesson that is for all of us, that he loves us in a deep and intimate way. That the thing God has most to say to us, the truest thing about him is that God loves you. And we also saw that Jesus would teach us what faith feels like. That even for Jesus, faith was sometimes a wild, heroic struggle just to stay in the game. And one thing I messed up last week that I want to remedy now, there's a great moment. A man comes to Jesus and says, "My servant," or "my son, my daughter is sick. Will you heal him?" And Jesus said, "I will if you believe." And this person said, "I do believe. Will you help my unbelief?" In that moment of great struggle, we have this amazing prayer that we can ask Jesus, even for help to trust him. Will you help my unbelief? That's what Jesus is teaching us. I didn't mention it as clearly last time, but I wanted to. And now we're going to talk about what do we do with the wonderful things in our lives. Everyone in this room, I know you, at least on some level, you have amazing things going on in your life. You're amazing people. We're going to talk in a few weeks about what do we do with actually the heaviest things in our lives, the most painful things. How do we walk through them together and in the presence of God? Grieving in a prayerful way is one of the great gifts that we have in our Christian spirituality. But today I want to talk about the other side. What do we do when things are amazing? Maybe you had that amazing day. Here's my amazing day. I took up surfing, as I said. I call what I do surf adjacent because I almost never get on the surfboard and ride it in. Because surfing is extremely hard. But one day I had this amazing day. I paddled out, and as I was paddling out and getting through the crashing waves, I saw the rainbows. It was gorgeous. And then as I got past the crashing waves, I saw that there were dolphins, rainbow dolphins. It was like a Lisa Frank folder. Do you know what Lisa Frank is? My sister had all the Lisa Frank gear. It was a style of stationery and pens when I was growing up. And they were covered in pink dolphins and rainbows. That's what I was feeling out there. And then the waves were way too big. It was irresponsible for me to be out there. But then I caught one and I rode it all the way in. I felt amazing. It was the best, biggest wave of my entire life. This was easily the best day surfing that I've ever had. It was gorgeous. And then I paddled back out there and I got crushed because the waves were way too big for me and it was irresponsible to get out there. And I got back and I got in my car and I caught my breath and I thought that was an amazing gift. And I'm glad I only stayed out there for 20 minutes. I would have got killed. But that one wave was just incredible. What do we do with the incredible things that come our way? There's a spiritual discipline of noticing them, of feeling how good they are. Sometimes that is called gratitude. We've got to cultivate the ability to notice them, to identify them, to invite them into our lives, to feel how good it feels when something good happens to us. And this too is something that Jesus invites us to experience alongside him. So I want to process together, what does it feel like when something incredible happens to us? Now, I have two unhelpful thoughts. Maybe they won't relate to you, but I want to offer you the two unhelpful thoughts that I experience when something incredible happens to me. I have a great day. Here are the two ways this goes wrong for me. Okay, how do we view our lives with God? That's what we're working our way through. The good and the bad. How do we experience them in Jesus' presence? Also got this that I forgot completely about. Okay. Two ideas I want to frame before I get the ways I think about the good things in my life wrongly. There's two other ideas that I want to help frame this entire talk that I completely forgot about until right now. Okay, James chapter 1. Whatever is good and perfect is a gift coming down from us to God. No, to us from God our Father, who created all the lights in the heavens. He never changes or casts a shifting shadow. This bit about God never changing is this, like, he's good and he won't stop being good towards you. And everything good in your life, you can have a pretty darn good guess it came from God. It was as if he saw you and said, here is a good day. Here is a gift to you. Here is an excellent time with a deep friend. Here's a phone call you didn't expect. Here's a promotion at work. Every good gift comes down to us from God our Father. Now here's the other thing I want to use to frame this moment, the discipline of noticing the good things in our life. You've heard of the concept of a trigger. That's when something bad happens to you. It evokes negative feelings within you. Researchers are developing the other side of the spectrum, a glimmer. Something good happens to you, evokes positive feelings within you. And just like a trigger, you can be sensitized in a way where you experience more glimmers. Here's the idea of a glimmer. They're the tiny, seemingly insignificant moments when you feel a sense of joy, pleasure, peace, gratitude. They're often catalyzed by simple daily things. Petting an animal, taking a shower, listening to the rain outside your window. The term glimmers was coined by Deb Dana, a licensed clinical social worker who specializes in complex trauma. And she invites us to work on the discipline of saying, this feels good to me, this was a gift to me, this is a deeply spiritual thing. It's not just a good day, not just something I should pass through, but to stop, to notice, to feel it, wildly good for your mental health. Now, when I have a good moment, as I was saying earlier, I do two wrong things with my good moments, and I'm curious if they resonate with you. Perhaps they don't. These could be only my problems. But there are moments where we fail to notice them. Oh, there's other part of this. Okay. All right. I like the glimmer idea, so let's stick with it. Glimmers aren't just grand experiences, although sometimes they are. They're also micro moments that begin to shape our system. That's kind of the insight here, that the good moments can shape your system of the way you perceive the world. And you can lean into that by stopping noticing feeling, by embracing the idea that this is formative for us. So as I've been teeing up for like an hour now, there's two unhelpful things that go wrong when I have a good moment. The first is like this. When life is good, I feel like I'm doing fine without God. And maybe you've been here. There's a famous saying that goes like this: nothing pierces through the fog of the human mind except for pain and beauty. And if I'm experiencing a normal day, if I'm kind of doing pretty good, not like I didn't win the lottery, not like it's the worst day of my life, but I'm in the normal, pretty good zone, I can have a tendency to say, I'll just go about my own agenda without the guidance of God, who has brought me here. Maybe that doesn't resonate with you. But for me, in the best seasons of my life, those sometimes coincided with the least engaged spiritual seasons of my life. That as a human being, what grabs my attention are the moments where I was in need and I cried out for help and God helped me. So when good things are happening to me, I can tend to forget about this God who helps me. That I was mostly just asking him for help and not as interested in a relationship as I thought I was or would have said I was. So sometimes you say life's good, I'm fine. I'm fine without God. I'm not as engaged in my spirituality as I might normally have been in a more difficult season. Maybe that's just me. Here's the other one. I'm a good person without need of guidance. Sometimes when life is good for me, I tend to take credit for that and feel like I have arrived in this moment under the guidance of my own will and sensibilities. And here's where I find that to really break down for me. There is a season of my life where I really was doing some moral searching and sort of concluding, I haven't done that many bad things in my life. And the bad things I did do were on an experimental basis. And I learned so much from them, so that's not that bad. And then I had this moment of insight that helped me realize I've also never been in a situation where to survive, I had to violate my own values. And there are a lot of people whose daily life requires them, their own survival requires them to violate their own core values. I've never had to choose between my survival or the survival of my loved ones and the core values that I cherish. I don't know what I would do in that moment. In fact, it is a humongous, wild privilege that I've never been in that place. So to say, look, I've done pretty good in my life is a way of naming the privilege that I've experienced, that I've never been forced to choose between my values and survival. And so when good things happen to me, I can go one of two unhelpful ways and say, I'm doing fine on my own and I'm a good person after all. But what I'm really doing is missing the moment of experiencing this glimmer, of experiencing the window that an amazing thing happening to you can really be as a window. And I want to help you and me think about how this is an invitation into a deeper plane of existence. Let's look at this passage one more time. Let's talk about sacraments. The Bible offers us this logic that says the good things in your life are windows into a different plane of existence. And so Jesus, this was a common way that he taught. He would say, here is much wine at a party, but I am the true vine. And he would teach by saying, here is all the food, the hungry people who could not find another meal, but I am the true bread. And I am the true light. That in the logic of Jesus' teaching on his great works in the world, great gifts to humanity, there were invitations to understand him in deeper ways. The bread wasn't just bread, it was an invitation to understand that it is Jesus who satisfies. The wine wasn't just wine, it was an invitation to understand that it is Jesus who brings joy. The good things in our life take on this sacramental nature where they become windows into a deeper understanding of Jesus. And if we are tuned in to say, Jesus, I want to meet you in every moment of my life, even the good moments are a way of saying, this is a window into a deeper, more powerful understanding of who Jesus is. That the good days aren't just good days, that the dolphins and the rainbows aren't just dolphins and rainbows, but these are invitations to understand God on a whole new level. So let's take a look at this passage. Once again, I hope. No, even better than you imagine. Is it in here? Yes! Okay. Here's the logic of this passage. Whatever is good comes down from God, who created all things. He never changes. Whatever is good comes from God because of his character. See, one of the ways we can wrestle through our life with God is, do we believe he is big enough and grand enough to deserve our best efforts? And the Bible's insistently saying, yes, his character has the moral beauty that is alluring and compelling to us in a way, if we rightly see it, that all the sacrifice required to follow this Jesus will feel like a small token of our best affection, because God is big enough and grand enough purely on the virtue of his character, that he is truly good in a way that never shifts and never changes. So God gives us these good things because of his character. The good things in our lives are not just good things, they're windows into the very heart of God. The wine wasn't just wine, it was about the God of joy. The bread wasn't just bread, it was about the God who satisfies. And any good moment in your life is not just a good moment, it is a window into God's very heart of love love for you. So that you can stop and say, God, you see me, you know me. Every good thing that happens to you and me is an invitation to go deeper into life with God. And so when we're thinking about how do we view the entirety of our lives with Jesus, it is better than we imagine. Even the good things become this invitation to know Jesus in a deeper way. It is as if God is saying, did you like that? I am even better. The best thing that has ever happened to me is just a token of God's way of saying, I'm even better than that. Come more deeply into my presence. If you like that, you will love knowing the God who thought that up and gave it to you. Come deeper. Come deeper. Every good thing that will ever happen to you is God's way of saying, come deeper into life with me. That's the invitation that is before us. It's even better than we imagine. So we're exploring together. What if we worked on rightly imagining a God who was worth all of this work, who was worth all of the risk, who was worth jumping in way before we're ready? Because God actually turned out to be even better than we imagined and totally, truly, actually worth it. As I thought about what could Dwell Church become, it's very tempting to say we're going to tinker with all the church stuff, we're going to do it differently. And we really might. That's one of the goals. Let's keep iterating. But what I hope most of all is that we discover God who was worth it, whose love was actually rich and satisfying and life-changing. That's my hope for you. You'll be on this journey saying, God, would you shape my heart and mind and imagination so that I can rightly see you in a way that is compelling to me and worth showing. Let me pray for you, then we're going to take our first communion as Dwell Church together. Jesus, thank you for these amazing people. God, would you reveal yourself to them as totally and completely worth all of it. God, is totally and completely worth our best efforts. Would you capture our hearts and minds? Would you call forth from us such devotion that we couldn't help but give our very best gifts to you, that it would feel like only a small token to say, Jesus, take my whole life, take the best of me, because you are so much better. Your character, its beauty compels us. Your love compels us to offer ourselves to you. Would you reveal yourself to us in that way? Would you dwell in our hearts? Would you dwell in our minds? Would you dwell here with us? We love you, Jesus. Amen. In a moment where Jesus was teaching in that way of saying, it's not just the good thing that is happening to you, but it's an invitation to go deeper. On the last night of his life, he was sitting not unlike this, with his loved ones who've been walking with him night and day for years and years. And one last time he tried to explain to them how he was going to change the world by changing human hearts. He said, tonight, the bread isn't bread. It's an invitation to go deeper. He said, tonight the wine isn't just wine, it's an invitation to go deeper. So for our first communion, together, invited the kiddos in. So glad that we're learning to meet this God who is even better than we imagined. And on the last night of his life, that's what Jesus was teaching about. That the bread isn't just bread. In fact, on the last night of Jesus' life, as he sat down to dinner, he broke open some bread and he passed some out to each person. And he said, tonight, it's not merely bread, this is my body broken for you. And as he gave each person wine, he said, tonight, this wine isn't merely wine, it is my blood spilled for a new relationship. That somehow the mystery of Jesus' death started over again, a friendship between people and God. He wanted to be your friend and my friend. And so ever since, thousands of years, Christians have had this moment. And I remember I had some friends that went to pass out Bibles in China and Russia, and they were feeling like this was a very dangerous thing. So when they took communion with the Christians there were using Skittles and Pepsi, because anything can be an invitation to come deeper. The good things in our life are an invitation to come deeper into life with Jesus. So tonight, this isn't bread, it's soup crackers. It's not wine, it's grape juice. But we take it together because we say, yes, Jesus, we want that deeper friendship with you. We don't know how else to say it. We don't know how to get it deeper or deep enough into our hearts. So we say, Jesus, we'll join you at your table. We'll say yes to your invitation to go deeper into life with you. So Lisa's going to play a bit. As you feel led, come up here, grab some grape juice and a cracker. Then we'll go back to our seats and we'll take it all together. You all are welcome to come, and I'm so glad you're here, and I'll be happy to help you do it. Let me pray for you one more time. Jesus, would you bless these people? We say yes to wanting to come deeper into life with you. In the way that it is bread and it is satisfying, would you satisfy our hearts? In the way that it is wine, that is joyful, that is a party, would you bring joy into our being?